What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Blazers Uprise Live here on what's today? Thursday. It's a Thursday night. There, we got you on the street. I don't know why your camera wasn't up. There we go. What's going on, everybody? A little late start time today. I haven't been able to hear out of my right ear pretty much all day, so I had to go try and get that taken care of because it's been driving me crazy. So it's nothing serious, nothing to worry about, but that's what I've been doing. That's why the stream's going live a little bit late. Eric, how's your day been, man?
Not too bad. Just I missed most of the game because I had to go pick my mom up from the airport. But other than that, it's been really good.
Yeah, Celtics went on a flurry. We'll talk NBA Finals, and we'll talk Phil Knight offering to buy the team. So we got some news to talk about tonight. It hasn't been a dead off season whatsoever. Pretty much every time we have a stream, there's something. Last week, it was Mike Schmitz being hired for the Portland Trailblazers assistant GM job, which is a guy that I've been familiar with for years. A pretty cool hiring. And this week, it's Phil Knight. Shocking everybody because in the past, he had said he didn't want to buy the Portland Trailblazers. He didn't see himself becoming an owner. And he made an offer today. So that was pretty cool news. We'll get into the nitty and the gritty. It'll probably be a little shorter stream than usual since we are going live late, but we will touch upon everything. We'll also take your questions about the Phil Knight situation. We'll get your takes on the NBA Finals if you watch the game. I watched a good portion of it. It was a pretty entertaining game one. And maybe we can touch on a couple other small things as well. Anyway, Eric, do you want to just hop straight into business here?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so do you want to preface it, or do you want me to preface it?
Either way, we can do it. I don't mind doing it if you don't.
You got it. You got it. You can step up to the plate. You can pinch hit for me right now.
So this morning, Woj reports that the Portland Trailblazers have received a legitimate offer from a group that is headed by Phil Knight, and then also what's his name, Malinsky or something like that, from he's a
Sounds right.
partial owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Is a young guy, only about 42 years old. Of course, Phil Knight's, I think he turns 85 this year because of the PK 85, right? That's how you know.
Yeah.
So my guess is there's some sort of agreement that when Phil Knight passes on, that other guy would become the official head owner. Not sure how the dynamics would work, but then it came out that they actually met with Adam Silver and discussed it. So it's pretty serious offer. And then later on today, we'll kind of go back and forth, but Adam Silver said that he would love to have Phil Knight as an owner of one of his NBA franchises. So that was a positive step towards that. There was some talk today about how's that going to work with him owning Nike, and he could circumvent the salary cap by offering players Nike
As if
deals.
Michael Jordan isn't an owner.
Yeah, so Jordan's an owner, and how is that any different? Because he obviously has the Jordan brand, and which is a part of Nike anyway. But yeah, so and I believe there's other conflicts of interest like that as well. Like all these owners own other businesses that can offer them endorsements or things like that. So it's not like it doesn't happen elsewhere, anyways. But so yeah, it sounds like it was for somewhere around $2 billion, and
Heard it was a little bit more.
yeah, possibly a little more. We know the franchise was valued at that recently for a little over $2 billion, and you have to keep in mind that they do own the Moda Center, so they also would get that arena along with the deal. And then you also have to factor in that despite what Adam Silver said tonight about expansion not being on their radar, I think most people are assuming that in the next few years they will add at least two more teams, and that being Seattle and Las Vegas most likely.
It'd be stupid for them not to expand in the next few years.
And they're talking about each one of those teams paying $2 billion to start their franchise, which would get split up 30 ways between the existing owners. So you're Jody's probably, or the trust for Jody is probably factoring that into the sale of it. So you tack that on to the asking price. And then also the expected TV deal, which whoever owns the team is going to greatly profit from. So all those things led the Jody Allen Trust to say that, well, they didn't say this, but it's believed that they are asking for $3 billion for the Blazers. So this might have been a little bit of a lowball offer to what they were offering. And then they come out a little bit later saying that the team is not for sale at all. And if you're to believe John Canzano, who last week, I believe he said within 6 months or so, it was sometime relatively soon, that the trust lists them as having to sell it. And whether you believe that or not, it was, I don't know the exact date, and we're not going to find out the date because leaking the date that they have to sell by would be a disaster for them trying to sell it, because then it might happen where people just wait till the day before the deadline and then lowball them because they have to accept an offer or whatever. So they have to try and drive up the price before that date, whenever that is. But back to Adam Silver now, after the Blazers tried to claim that they're not for sale, Silver confirmed that they have to sell and that Jody's been a good steward of the franchise, meaning they've known all along that she was just a temporary owner and that at this point was coming. So it seems to back up what Canzano says. Now, he hasn't been the most credible person, but it looks like he was giving the right information in this situation.
Yeah, I don't like Canzano being right, but it sounds like he's right.
Mm-hmm.
So this leads us into, a situation where the fan base is excited about the potential that Phil Knight could be the owner. And it seemed like everybody that I saw wants this sale to Phil Knight to happen. It didn't seem like there was any division, and trust me, the Blazers fan base will be divided on literally anything they can be. But it seemed like generally everybody was wishing for this to happen. Mm-hmm. So, obviously, like I have two takeaways here. One is I don't think the team's going to move. I don't think the league is going to let them move. There's a lot of things to go through to move an NBA team, and I don't think the league would let Portland do what the owners of the Seattle Sonics did in terms of moving that team to OKC. Also, the Sonics didn't even have a stadium, while Portland has a pretty well-ran stadium, up to par stadium, that's a part of the organization, basically. So there's a lot of people that have been worried about the team moving. I don't think that's something to worry about, but it also would be nice if the sale went through, because I would have full confidence that a part of the sale would be you have this co-business partner, whatever his name was, I don't know how to say his name, going all in alongside Phil Knight, and Phil Knight's 85 years old. So there would need to be a plan of succession as part of the purchase. He's not some 30, 40-year-old guy. He's 85. Hopefully he's around a lot longer, but when you're 85 years old, buying an NBA franchise like that, I mean, you got to have a plan for succession. But Phil Knight, if he is the purchaser, being a home state guy, being a homegrown guy from Oregon, I think would put it in place where as part of the transfer of ownership after his passing, you can stipulate conditions that the Blazers would have to stay in Portland. Now, that's a bunch of legal stuff that I don't really, I'm not super well versed in, but I assume that as part of the purchase, whoever gets the ownership transferred to them, a condition of it would be that they try and keep the team in Portland. So whether that's his business partner or potentially he could pass it on to, he has a son, I forget his first name, but he owns an animation studio actually in Hillsborough.
Matthew Knight Arena.
Is it Matt? I thought it was started with a T. I don't know. He might have multiple sons. Ducks fans, you guys probably know his family better than me. So this is something that I'm probably the least educated in here because I'm not a Ducks fan or anything. So I don't know a whole lot about Phil Knight like a lot of you probably do. But just having a homegrown guy buy the team, it's not something that I'm worried about the team moving, but it is nice to potentially have a home state guy, a local guy buy the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Much to what you were saying, I am not even the slightest bit worried about the team moving. They're not going to put another city like if someone from Seattle buys this, buys the franchise, they're not going to put another city in the same position they put Seattle in a few years ago. It just makes no sense to do that, and it makes much more sense for all the owners too to just give Seattle a new team. I don't even know if Seattle would want like a non-expansion team at this point. I think they would rather just start over with the Sonics name and all that stuff and not have to worry about, do we keep the Blazers name or switch them to the Sonics, like all that kind of crap. So
Super Blazers.
Yeah.
The Seattle Super Blazers.
I just think that's all overblown. It's like scare tactics and fear mongering and all that stuff. Even in a tanking year, the Blazers were in the top half of the league of attendance and all that kind of stuff. It's not like we don't support the team here. So I don't think they would move the team out of here. So I'm not worried about that, but it is good because I was listening to some shows like when the Canzano stuff came out about them having to sell it, and it was universally said, no, Phil Knight has no interest in owning a sports team or whatever. So it was kind of a surprise today, and a good surprise, because I feel like, I don't know, he would just lend a lot of credibility to this franchise that desperately needs some at the top, I think.
Yep. And then the other reason why it seemed like a lot of fans wanted it is Phil Knight obviously has deep pockets. It would almost be back to the situation with Paul Allen where we potentially wouldn't have to worry too much about payroll or luxury tax or whatnot. Now, teams are always going to run it like a business. If you conduct the tax and it doesn't make sense to pay the tax, yeah, of course you're going to choose no tax over the tax. But if you have an owner with deep pockets that's really competitive and wants to win, he will prioritize that more compared to his checkbook. And that's the type of owner it seems like Phil Knight would potentially be. And that's part of him being a local guy. He's a local guy. So compared to somebody coming in, maybe viewing this as more of a business venture and like something fun on the side, I would have confidence that it could end up being like a situation where we're not pinching pennies anymore, where we are willing to go into the tax to make the roster as good as possible and that sort of thing, which it feels like we've kind of gotten a little bit away from since Paul Allen passed.
Yeah. So, my apologies. So Matthew Knight passed away. He was his son, died in a scuba diving accident, it looks like, at the age of 34. So his only son is Travis Knight. They also have a daughter. I think her name is, let me just get this, Christina. He has 2 children, but I don't know if they would be involved in this. But the other part of that spending money thing is, so the Dodgers have had the highest payroll in baseball for a long time. I think it's by far this season. They're not afraid to try and pay to win championships. Now, with the salary cap, it's a little tricky, of course. But if you have an owner that's willing to go as far into the tax as needed, or is not having any kind of limitations on, you need to get under this amount or you need to save this amount of money, I think that is a huge bonus to any sports team.
Yep, I agree. Let me think a couple donos. Shout Kyle Wilson, $5 dono. He says, Silver pulled a Russell Wilson with his, I prefer the Blazers to stay in PDX. Dude, you are the commish. You are the only one who could approve a move. That's Kyle Wilson with the $5 dono.
Actually, that's not true. It's the owners who would vote on a move. So he can't say it officially, but yeah, I mean, I don't like the word preference, but I mean, he can't just say, I guarantee the because if the owners approve it, that's all he can do. But he can strongly suggest to the owners that we do not want to move Portland out and set a precedence that a city that has supported their team every step of the way can just have it ripped them from them, because that would really hurt the product in the NBA. I think it was bad enough that what happened in Seattle and hopefully they learned from that. And I don't think they would make that same mistake again. And Adam Silver's been with the NBA for a long time. He knows how much they screwed that up, and how much it would mean for Seattle to get a team back. So I don't think they're going to mess this up with any other team. Now, if you're talking about another city that doesn't necessarily support their team, maybe like this all usually hinges around arena deals. So I mean, maybe there becomes a point where a new owner wouldn't help pay for a new arena and they were asking for public money and public doesn't want to give them money. In a city like Portland, I could definitely see that happening. But this is the beauty of getting rich owners, though, is someone like Phil Knight, who builds like an empire of buildings in Beaverton for Nike campus. He's constantly under construction over there building new stuff. I don't think would have a problem then cementing his legacy with a beautiful arena in Portland. And I don't even think that's anytime soon that's going to be needed, because the Moda Center is still in really good shape for how old it is. But yeah, so I think he meant to say like we're not moving Portland, but he can't just officially say that because it's ultimately not up to him.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you, Kyle Wilson, for $5. Dono. Shout Liam Best, $5 Australian dono. He says, Woj mentioned Smolinski was involved as well. That makes me hype. He has done a great job with the Dodgers. So I don't pay enough attention to baseball. Actually, I pay too much attention to baseball being a Mariners fan. Yeah. Depression.
I mean, he's not. I think he's just like he owns a small part of the Dodgers, I believe. I don't know how much percent. If anyone knows that in chat, that'd be great to know. Yeah. But yeah,
I mean, I just want, people that aren't terrible, because with a lot of billionaires that buy these teams, like, they have some things that they've done. I mean, like, it's hard to find a billionaire who's definitely a good person. I mean, Jody has skeletons in her closet, and she wasn't even the one who bought the team. She was just the sister of Paul Allen. So, just as long as it's not a terrible person, and just as long as they want to be competitive, are willing to spend on the team, and want to keep them in Portland, that's all I ask. It's not a super high bar. So if Smolinski is, if he's the one that is supposed to take over once Phil Knight is gone, as long as he just wants to keep the team in Portland, is willing to, and wants to be competitive, then that's good enough for me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it also came out today that Portland is one, I think, like 8 to 10 finalists for a WNBA franchise. They're going to expand, I guess. So maybe this is a package deal, as mentioned in chat by Priest. He's been tied to the WNBA before. I know Portland has had a franchise in the past, but maybe it's a situation where he gets both the Blazers and starts a WNBA team here. And as Priest also says, maybe he will actually put money into having a G League team as well and having that all tied in through Nike somehow. I don't know. But yeah.
There is a chance, just speak out the G League thing, there is a chance that once the NBA expands, that the NBA might force every, and like when the CBA comes up. So in the future, I think there might be a situation where the NBA makes it so that you have to have a G League team, and then they expand the draft to 4 rounds, and it's actually like a true minor league team that you fill out the roster for, and you can like move players down, up and down, much like the MLB. Obviously, you're not going to move down anybody, anybody important, but, instead of 2-way spots, being able to call up different guys would be cool. And it'd be cool to follow a minor league team knowing that that's your minor league team, and those are all technically your players, part of your organization. So I'm hopeful that at some point in the next few years, it's a situation where the G League becomes like a true minor league, because me and you are nerdy as hell, Eric, and we know probably 120 players in this upcoming NBA draft. We could do a 4-round draft stream, and I think that it would need to be the first 2 rounds on day 1 and the next 2 rounds on day 2. 4 rounds in a row would take too long, obviously, but we could do 4 rounds of draft and cover probably pretty much everybody that gets drafted and know a little bit at least about them. So that would be fun just from a fan standpoint for me.
Yeah, I know, congratulations to you, by the way, Drew Timme going back to Gonzaga, and also Malachi Smith from Chattanooga joining them. It's been
good few days.
I mean, I know Jalen Suggs was good, but like it's been a while since I can remember a scoring guard like that being on Gonzaga, so that'll be interesting to watch.
He also plays some D too.
Yeah. So there were some people that went back to school. The decision for college students was last night. Strother went back as well. Congratulations. Yeah, so you got a lot of players that made the right decision, but then there was so many players last night that decided to stay in the draft that I don't think are going to even come close to being drafted. Lester Keonis from Memphis.
Yeah, I don't understand that at all.
Like I don't even see him on like the top 100 on any board. I look at, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, what kind of information are you getting from teams that you think you're gonna get drafted? And so, but like those kind of players, like them, and we could talk about them if we had a minor league team. That would be for sure someone who would be like on a G League team somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, honestly, just like side note on that, it makes even less sense for guys like that to actually commit to the draft now that NIL's in place and you can make money off your name, image, and likeness in college. That's honest. Without that, I don't think Drew Timme goes back to Gonzaga, but I guarantee you, he's going to make more money at Gonzaga next year than he would in the G League. So I think that played a part. And you saw a lot of like middling players commit to the draft, but then a lot of decent sized names actually go back to college. And I think that's because of NIL.
Dude, how great is it going to be to see some of these guys go back to college and play again? And that'll build, because that's how it used to be. Like when I grew up, we got into the early 90s where some people went right out of high school, but for the most part, people went several years to college, and you would see them year after year. So you got to see like a Gary Payton play for several years at Oregon State or whatever before they went pro. And it was just really cool to, you're like, oh, what's going to happen next year? This team looks stacked, and like the runners up, Caleb Love goes back to school. Baycott goes back to school, like you said, probably because of NIL deals. But then they add Pete Nance today, I think. So that's going to be fun to watch them and see how they play next year if they have a chance of getting back to the Final Four. So a lot of cool storylines because of NIL deals. So that's going to be I think it's going to kind of mess with football a little bit, but it's going to be really good for basketball to see all these guys go back. But to your point about Timme, best case scenario, he gets drafted in the second round, right? And then makes, around the minimum, which is just under $1 million next year. Maybe he signs for just over $1 million from some team that gives him a little more than the minimum. But that's like a situation where, NIL, he's probably going to make at least $1 million in doing endorsements, like just in the area where he goes to school, let alone national endorsements. He'll be like one of the front runners for Player of the Year, all that kind of stuff. So that's a good decision by him, I think, even though it kind of sucks to have to go back to school again. But I think this is going to happen a lot more, and I really like it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So we will have you guys covered more with draft stuff, obviously, as we get closer. It'd just be, going back to what started this conversation, it'd just be fun to have, a 4-round NBA draft where the 3rd and 4th rounds you're drafting basically for a G League team. Because that's the thing is, last year, Trendon Watford was like one of the guys where it's like if he goes undrafted or if we get a pick late in the second round, that's a guy I would take a look at. And I tossed out 8 names out there, so it's not like, I made a video only about Trendon Watford or anything, but that's a guy who intrigued me. And we end up picking him up on a 2-way, and he gets the chance to play because our season goes awry. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have gotten a chance to play. And it becomes a situation where he ended up being a really good pickup, and that's a really good story. Now, imagine having a G League team where, he could have played down there, a G League team local enough where he could still, I don't know how they work out the rules, but he could still practice with an NBA team or, on certain days or whatever. But imagine being able to watch, get excited about G League guys like that, because I think Trent Watford would look really freaking good in the G League. Like, he would look phenomenal in the G League. And it'd be fun to be able to cover that a little bit. So, from a fan standpoint, and I think it would potentially help with players as well, that would be something that I want to see in the future as part of an expansion. But
well, I mean, just look at our free agency, and we did a mock-off season draft for those that don't know. And you got, I mean, there's legitimately like 20 guys who I could have made an argument should have been drafted and didn't get drafted. So there's plenty of talent. I think when you look at how much talent a lot of the teams are going to have in the actual NBA next year, I think there is room for expansion and a minor league team for each team.
Yep, agreed. Shout Cowlus and another dono, this time a $2. He says, can Knight buy the Timbers too? Bring an NHL team. I would love for Knight to buy the Timbers because there's been so much drama, and I don't even follow the Timbers that closely, but just speaking to Connor, who's our mod and our resident Timbers fan, just there's so much drama with the Timbers ownership and some of the stuff that happens with that organization that it would be cool if they were able to get a local owner and sell that team too, but I don't think that team's going to get sold. But some stuff has been bad enough that it's almost to the point where I could see Major League Soccer maybe trying to encourage a sale. So, that'd be cool. NHL team, I would follow the NHL if we had a team, but we don't. I'm not going to watch amateur hockey, so I'm not going to get into the Winterhawks or anything. But I'm down for everything. But just as long as the Blazers play here in Portland, I'm chilling. I'm not really worried about that, regardless. But it would be pretty cool, and obviously nobody would have to worry about it if Phil Knight was the owner, because he ain't moving the team anywhere. There's no doubt about that. So, fingers crossed. Well, that would be a cool ownership situation.
There's always been rumors too that part of the direction in the estate of Paul Allen, his trust, is that when they sell the team, they have to have some sort of confirmation that the owner can't move the team or won't move the team. I don't know how binding that is, but I believe they will do the right thing, hopefully, and make sure whoever buys it will keep it in Portland.
Yep, and we will have you guys covered as this potentially develops, but it sounds like Jody Allen and Vulcan and all them are trying to get the most money in a sale.
Yeah.
And it's becoming a negotiation situation.
And people are saying, like, why didn't she accept the offer or whatever? Well, it's kind of not up to her because there's a trust that makes the final decision. And I believe Bert Kold might be a part of that trust. But anyways, they're not just going to accept the first offer. They're trying to get more money. It's like a business decision. So they're not, if they offer close to what the valuation is, that's not really how sales usually work with sports teams. Usually you have to project a little bit into the future now. Mm-hmm. Now, back in the day when you could buy a team, I think Paul Allen bought the team for like $80 million or something like that, $70 million, somewhere around there. And now it's worth over $2 billion. So good investment, right? But you have to, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, there's a few things that you have to add to that when talking about that if Jody's not allowed to keep the team until those events happen. But on top of that, I've also heard that there might, I don't know why, but I guess Jody is trying to find a way to where she can keep the team or buy the team. And I don't really understand that or if that's true or not, but they're looking for a loophole, I guess, in their trust or whatever.
So that she won't have to sell the team?
Yeah.
I mean, how badly do
I
you want Jody to sell?
I mean, it's pretty badly,
Yeah.
but as we talked about before, I don't necessarily blame her for wanting to be out of the tax the last 3 years when we haven't been above
Yeah.
500 at the trade deadline any of those years. And we've had situations where we've had high payrolls. Even the year, 2 years ago, where we traded Scal at the deadline, and we all hated that, but we had the highest payroll in the league that year. It's not like we were pinching pennies or something. She was willing to pay the highest payroll. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a case where maybe if we were winning and we were a third or fourth seed or something by the trade deadline, she would be willing to go as far into the taxes the GM wanted to go. But it's hard to just guess what that's going to be. So
Yeah.
I would rather just take my chances with a rich owner that we know for sure will put money into the team. And if he's buying the team, he's not buying it just to be like, oh, okay, I don't care about it. Like, I'm just going to let him do whatever and not pay tax or whatever. I feel like if this Phil Knight group in particular buys the team, it's because they want to win a championship. And I think he put the same dedication that he's put for now years into the Oregon program, into whatever business he owns elsewhere. And I think it'll be successful, and I think he would be a good owner. So I do want her to sell if it is to this group.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. I don't know. She shouldn't be trying to find a loophole. If that's what Paul Allen wanted, she shouldn't be sitting here trying to find a loophole.
I think it's not necessarily that Paul Allen wanted her to sell. I think it's complicated, but I think so. She got all these assets, right, when Paul Allen died, or the trust did, and it's in her name. But I think there's a point where she has to start paying taxes on the estate. And all of these things are just valuations. Like, this business, the Blazers are worth 2.1 billion or whatever. The Seahawks are worth whatever they're valued at. And then all those other businesses are valued at this. There's not a lot of cash there. So if she has to start paying taxes, I think is the problem. And it's gotten pushed off to a point where I don't think she can push it off anymore. So she has to start liquefying some of the assets into cash so she can have money, and live comfortably, but also pay the necessary taxes on the estate she got when Palan passed. So I think that's what's going on. So I think she's trying to find a way to maybe pay the taxes without having to sell either of the teams. But it sounds like both of them are for sale. And even though, despite them both saying that the Seahawks and Blazers aren't for sale, it sounds like they both are.
Yeah, I mean, I hope she sells. I don't know how bad I want her to sell because, like you said, I can't blame her a whole lot for trying to duck the tax. It's just, I don't know. Man. It's just hard to say. If she truly did, the main reason why I want her to sell is I truly do believe she had a part of that Robert Covington and Norman Powell to the Clippers trade.
Yeah.
I truly do believe that she kind of forced Cronin to make that sort of deal, because we give Cronin some crap for the deadline, but if he had been sitting with people in the front office planning potential trade routes for those guys, why did he spend all that time with those people planning potential options with those guys and then just completely go AWOL, go off with ownership with Jody and Burt Cold, and then come out and that trade's done? It just seems like ownership forced him to make that trade just to make sure that they got under the tax with time to spare. They just didn't really care. They needed to get under the tax no matter what. That's what pretty much the only thing that mattered to them. And if that's truly what happened, which is what I believe, then that's why I want her to sell the team. Because you could have had some good moves that would have gotten you back better assets, in my opinion, that also still would have gotten you under the tax. And I think Cronin knew that. He's been around too long. And yeah, we can give him crap for like making an assumption that the Lakers pick wasn't going to end up 8th and, not negotiating well enough to put that as a backup protection on the Pelicans pick that was owed to us and then wasn't because they made the playoffs. But that's him negotiating and him like, not making assumptions. The first trade, the Robert Covington, Norman Powell to the Clippers trade, was just straight up flat out bad to the point that, from some of what we've heard, it sounds like ownership kind of forced it. And you do not want an ownership that's going to force you to duck the tax 6 days before the trade deadline when you probably have other better options to duck the tax. And it seemed like they didn't care about those. So that's the main reason why I want the team sold. And that's not something I know for sure happened. Who knows? It could have been just Cronin going to them and saying, hey, we could do this deal. I'd be okay with doing this deal if you guys want to approve it. I don't know. But that deal just gives me a bad taste in my mouth. And I feel like ownership had something to do with it. And if we had Phil Knight as the owner, yeah, you want to duck the tax in a season where you're already pretty much going to tank. Yeah, you're ducking the repeater tax, you're ducking the luxury tax, and it's a season where you're going to tank the rest of the year anyway because it hasn't gone as planned, and Dame's out pretty much for the season. Maybe you could have brought him back late, but, they went the tanking route. So it made sense to duck the tax, but the way they went about it, I don't think Phil Knight would have forced a panic trade 6 days before the deadline for pennies on the dollar, which is what Norman Powell and Robert Covington got traded for. Like
I said, if it went exactly like you just laid out, which we've laid out here on Blazers Uprise a million times, but yeah, I agree with you. However, I've also heard that Cronin thought the Eric Bledsoe contract would be a lot more valuable at the trade deadline, and it ended up being not valuable at all. We could have told him that, right? But yeah, I think that might have been the misstep, is that they thought they were making that trade 6 days before the deadline because they were getting a contract that they thought was going to be flippable within the next few days. I just don't understand that,
because it was like $18 million, and then he was $3.5 million guaranteed next season, so he was almost an expiring. But Robert Covington was a $12 million pure expiring, without any money owed the following season. So it was actually 3.9 owed next year for Eric Bledsoe. So I don't really understand making that type of trade for the Bledsoe contract. Like, if that's truly the case, then he is absolutely the worst GM in the league, because A, it's not a big free agent class. Like, it's not that good of a free agent class. Not a lot of teams are really trying to even create cap space. B, there's really not that many bad contracts across the league for multiple years. There's like a Tobias Harris, but it's not like it was 3-4 years ago where you had a bunch of contracts signed in 2016 when the cap took a huge spike, which was the year that KD went to Golden State, which was the year that Evan Turner got signed in Portland for that terrible contract. Alan Crabb was signed for that terrible contract. But, like, Timofey Mozgov got $16 million a year, so did Luol Deng. Like, Bismack Biyombo, I believe, got a similar amount. So there used to be a ton of terrible contracts in the league where if you could get an expiring, like an Eric Bledsoe expiring, you could take on, a bad 2 or 3 year contract or whatever. But that's not the case anymore. So if he didn't realize, A, it's not a free agent class that teams are trying to create cap space for, and B, there's not a lot of bad contracts, if he didn't realize that, then he is truly, truly in over his head to an extent that even I didn't think. But I that's why I think ownership had a part of it.
Yeah, well, here's what I'll say to that. Who was the player that they were most tied to at the deadline?
Jeremy Grant.
Right. And who matches the contract of Jeremy Grant?
But then why did they create the $20 million TP?
Okay, but this was before they created that TP, right? Just in theory, just if you're talking about just the day of the Rocco Norman Powell trade, right? So they traded for a player that Detroit could then waive and save cap, get off Jeremy Grant's contract next year. They are one of those teams who most likely were looking for cap space this summer because they need a lead guard or whatever next to Cade, and could possibly put themselves in a position to get one of those guys. And then I think they thought that if they got that Pelicans pick from New Orleans, and Detroit would accept that along with Eric Bledsoe, that was before I guess they necessarily needed to create the trade exception. But then maybe once the Detroit was like, no, we don't want Bledsoe, maybe then that's when they had to try to create the trade exception. But
yeah, I mean,
Detroit was smart though, because they were like, no, I'm gonna wait to see if that Pelicans pick pans out first. And unlike Cronin, that's what they did. But yeah, I think
I don't here, hold on. I don't buy that, because it's like he said that they were looking at New Orleans, in advance before making that CJ trade.
Mm-hmm.
So and they made that CJ trade with how many days left until the trade deadline? Like, it was only a couple days after the Norm Powell Robert Covington trade. So it's like they already had a pretty good feeling that they were trading CJ to New Orleans. You could have gotten back Josh Hart and then flipped whatever else New Orleans traded out to match, Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Thomas Satoransky, which Thomas Satoransky's an expiring contract. Yeah. You could have flipped that Detroit's way, and that would have been better than them taking back Eric Bledsoe, where he would have $4 million guaranteed next year. So they could have baked that into the CJ deal. So
maybe that's why Nance got included. He wasn't initially supposed to be a part of it, but then that's how they got the trade exception.
That might be why Nance was included in the Pelicans trade, but I mean, it doesn't make sense for getting the Eric Bledsoe contract for a Jeremy Grant trade when you had a good feel that you were trading CJ to the Pelicans, and you could have just, instead of getting back Eric Bledsoe, you could have done other trades instead of that Clippers trade, and then you could have taken back Josh Hart and Jeremy Grant in a 3-team trade for CJ McCollum.
But if we do that and we don't make the Clippers trade, then how do we get under the tax? Because that would have been, I mean, I know
you
we
throw
could
Larry Nance Jr. into the Pelicans.
Yeah. I know. I'm just saying, like, then at the time that if they didn't think they had to include Nance to make that trade exception to push off getting Grant to the summertime, like, then it becomes complicated, because if the CJ deal was going to include Grant, that wouldn't have been enough to get under the tax, so they would have had to make another deal. So I'm assuming, just like, if I just had to like guess at what happened, is they made that first trade thinking that the Eric Bledsoe contract was going to be valuable to a team like the Pistons, and then they grossly misjudged that, and then had to create that trade exception because the Pistons wouldn't agree to a 3-team trade that included Jeremy Grant as part of that trade in compensation from New Orleans going back. So, and then they had to just get that. They were banking on getting that lottery pick, which we've heard rumors from several sources that pick was going to New Orleans or to Pistons for Jeremy Grant anyway. So
yeah. I mean, I just don't buy it at all, because I feel like they probably would have known by the time they made that Clippers trade what the avenues were for Jeremy Grant, what the CJ McCollum trade was. Like, that teams discussed for weeks leading up to the trade deadline.
Yeah,
so,
but,
if you don't have a good feel at that point, then that's more of a reason to wait to make the Clippers trade.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be on the table. They didn't have many assets. Even Jerry West, working for them, said that he was shocked by the fact that they were able to get Norman Powell and Robert Covington with the assets that they had.
Oh, for sure. It was a terrible trade. It was terrible.
Yeah,
I'm not justifying it in any way. That's not my point. I'm just saying what I think happened from their point of view, and I think they just badly misjudged how much certain players were going to be wanted.
Based on what we've heard with like how he kind of randomly they were laying out some plans and then randomly went AWOL off with ownership, and the logic behind the situation, I just don't buy that. I believe ownership stepped in and kind of forced the trade. Nothing else logically makes any sort of sense to me, because you don't make that Clippers trade that early without knowing what your next step is and how it affects your next step. You make those trades in conjunction with each other, not, oh, I made this Clippers trade and oh, now I can't do what I was hoping to do after it, so now I gotta try and create this $20 million TPE. Like, that's just
I mean, it's hard to know when it's seemingly boneheaded decisions from several fronts, It doesn't seem logical for any of the things that happened or any of the stories we've heard.
Yeah, but we heard he went AWOL with ownership. That makes a lot more sense to me.
But why did ownership like demand he traded him to the Clippers? I don't buy the whole friend thing. Well, Ballmer, they have a friendship with Ballmer and they had to do it, or I don't know.
I believe. I mean, Burt Cold as a personality, like he supposedly always kind of wanted to run an NBA team a little bit. He's kind of, strongman personality, supposedly. So I think it was just they didn't really care what they got back. I think they just cared about ducking the tax, which goes back to the initial point where I want them to sell the team because of that.
But that goes against what you're saying. If they already had the CJ deal in place pretty much, then they would have known that they were ducking the tax from that one, right?
I don't know.
So why would they have to duck the tax in both?
I mean, I don't know. Like that's the thing, is there's nothing that explains it fully.
Yeah.
But I'm more inclined to believe that because we heard
all
that.
To blame.
That.
Let's just all agree to that. Cronin's dumb for accepting the trades and not getting more assets back from the Clippers, or demanding that if they're going to do that trade, they at least get their 2028 first or whatever from it. And Jody's dumb for forcing him to do that trade if that's what happened. And yeah, it was just a mess. And they should have waited a few days to see if they could get more value out of any of their players. There were several teams that needed to make moves at the deadline that didn't end up making them. You don't know how desperate they would have been at the deadline. And so, yeah, it was just a mess from all parties, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just believe ownership had a part of that. At least a part of that. And I want the team sold because I don't like questioning, I don't like worrying about that. But I don't want an ownership. Like, if that's true, I don't want an ownership group like that. And I don't 100% know anything's true, but it just, to me, that's where I've kind of landed on the situation, and that affects my opinion of whether I want the team sold or not. So, I mean, I don't think Phil Knight would do anything like that. So give me Phil Knight as Blazers owner, plain and simple. Yeah. Shout out Caleb Pendergraft, $5 dono. He says, I want the ownership group to buy the Blazers so we can some of their success rub off on us, that we can be the new kings of the NBA. Caleb, I don't know if you're drinking, man, but I don't know what that dono means, but thank you for supporting the channel.
It can mean two things. One, he thinks that Phil Knight would allow us to get to the top of the mountain and win a championship as the kings of the NBA, or it could literally mean that he's being sarcastic or thinks that we're going to be the next Sacramento Kings and our franchise is going to be dreadful for 20 years.
Yeah, he said in chat after that dono, he said something along the lines of how he really messed up that dono message or something. I don't see the comment anymore, so maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, the good old Caleb, man. I always enjoy your dono messages.
He says, how did I forget so many details? Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what he said. So yeah. Thank you for the dono, man. Shout Gordon, what's up, Gordon? His dono is what's up. Thank you for the $2 Singapore dono. Good to see you, Gordon. Yeah, it's been a minute, man. Hope everything's good. All right, you want to finish off the stream talking about finals?
Yeah. Sure.
Let's do it. So, Boston just goes on a tear and comes back late in this game and wins game 1 on the road in San Francisco. Let me pull up the box score here. Derek White hit some big time threes. Go ahead.
While you're doing that, I just want to answer this question because I don't want to go back to it later. But so some people were asking, someone else asked about this earlier. Now Pineapple's just asking how expansion teams work. So they would get a pick in the draft. It's usually not the first pick, or they might give them a lottery odds as like the 5th or 6th pick. Something like that. So they'll get a first-round pick and a second-round pick. And then there'll also be a situation where every team can protect 8 players. And so then there's a draft between the 2 expansion teams, and they get to draft a team from any of the players that weren't protected on those teams, and then they can go through free agency as normal. But they wouldn't start off as a G League team. They would be in the actual NBA. There'd probably be some maneuvering of the divisions and stuff, especially if it was two West Coast teams. But yeah, so that's how it would work. And then, so like Portland this summer could protect like Dame, Ant, Nurk, Nas, whatever. And then they can choose between Bledsoe and, Didi, Lozada and stuff like that. So Charlotte in the last expansion actually just went like super young and wanted to clear, like not have any bad contracts. So teams will hope that those expansion teams take a bad contract, but so if teams are smart, they won't do it. So they'll just take a bunch of young guys and save their cap and go at it through free agency or whatever. Didn't really work out for Charlotte early on, but that was their game plan. But that's basically how it works. Like each team gets to protect a certain amount of players, and then there's a draft with the two expansion teams for the rest. And now back to the game.
All right, yeah. So, Boston going on a tear late in this game. They went on like a 14-0 run, just hit 3 after 3. You had Al Horford 6 for 8 from 3 for him in his first NBA Finals game for the veteran. Jaylen Brown, 2 for 8, but he was 10 for 23 from the field at 24 points. Jason Tatum struggled to shoot in this game. He was 3 for 17, but 13 assists. I don't know if you remember, like I've talked about this for a while. I always liked Jason Tatum because I thought he was a better playmaker than he showed early on in his NBA career. Like I first watched him when he was a junior in high school, and I was impressed with the way he passed the ball. And then he came into the league, first couple of years, only averaged like 1-2 assists per game, and I always felt like there was some untapped potential there, and he's grown into it. This past year, he averaged about 4.5 assists per game, but that's part of the reason I like Jason Tatum as a prospect was I thought he was an underrated passer, and I think he just came into the league focusing on being a scorer. And it's cool to see his passing finally flourish. And in game 1 tonight, scoring-wise, he wasn't able to score, but 13 assists and only 2 turnovers, Eric, for him.
Yeah, good numbers. So, yeah, he finished 3 for 17 from the field, something like that. So, yeah, like I said, I didn't really get to watch much of it, but from what I heard, he just missed a lot of open shots. And, yeah, so you expect him to hit more of those, but... part of the growth of the elite players is even when you have a bad shooting game, you contribute in other areas. So if he's finding ways to do that, that's definitely going to help Boston. And from all accounts, it sounds like Boston didn't even play their best game. Golden State, I think, shot really well from 3, didn't turn the ball over much, and still lost the game. So that doesn't look good for their chances of winning the series.
Yeah, 100% agree. I was rolling with Boston in this series. I'm rooting for Boston in this series. Good to see him win game 1. Derek White off the bench, 5 for 8 from 3, had 21 points. He was a plus 25 for them. He was a huge pickup at the NBA trade deadline coming over from the San Antonio Spurs, and he just seemed to hit timely threes all game long. When Golden State would go on a run, he would hit a 3. Golden State was actually up 80-66. Derek White hits a 3, kind of sparks their run to get back into the game, and then, of course, they go on that huge run late to win it by 12, 120, 108. On the Warriors side of things, Steph Curry had 21 in the first quarter. He started off hot, finished with 34, so cooled down a bit. Klay Thompson...
I did see they were running drop scheme a little bit on.
Yeah. He may adjusted, though.
Yeah.
Would you imagine that? He didn't wait until game 1 was over, and they lost. He adjusted in the middle of game 1. That's how you know he ain't Terry Stotts. So Curry's still a solid game, 34 points, 5 assists, 12 for 25 from the field, but he didn't get much help outside of that. Klay Thompson, 6 for 14. He had 15 points in 39 minutes. Draymond Green was 2 for 12 in 38 minutes, 4 points. Andrew Wiggins had 20. He was their second leading scorer. He was 8 for 15, so a solid game for him in his first NBA Finals game. But off the bench, you get 12 from Otto Porter Jr., 9 from Jordan Poole. They need him to play better. That's who I said was going to be the X factor in this series, Eric. And I think you agreed on that, right? He was 2 for 7 in 25 minutes. They need more out of him.
Yeah, for sure.
So, game 1 goes Boston's way. If they win game 2, do you think the series is over?
Yeah, I mean, if they win game two, that's going to be tough for Golden State. I mean, just losing game one is bad enough, but yeah, I think Golden State needs to protect their home court and win a game here. I think I wouldn't say it's over necessarily, but yeah, it's going to be very tough for Golden State to come back.
Yep, absolutely agree. So game two will be. Let me. I don't know actually when game two will be. Game two will be Saturday? Nope, not Saturday. Sunday. We have to wait till Sunday for game two, Eric. Yeah. That kind of sucks. Mm-hmm. And then game three is on Wednesday. So 2 games in between every, or 2 days in between every game. It looks like until game four. Between games 3 and 4, there's only 1 day of rest. So that's the schedule for the NBA Finals. Rooting for the Celtics. Don't want to see the Warriors win another one. Would be cool to see the Celtics win it all. A year after the Bucks win it all. Getting some different teams up in here. I know the Celtics have won a bunch of championships, but you got a lot of guys playing in their first NBA Finals. So it's always cool to see new faces on the stage instead of LeBron versus Steph for 5 years in a row.
Yeah. Are you ready to predict a Boston sweep?
No, I'm not going to jinx Boston, okay? I'm not going to do it. I'm ready to thank a couple more donos, though. Caleb Pendergraft, $10 dono this time. Caleb, you should butcher more donos so that you have to dono to correct your previous dono, because that's a win for us.
And then it being this dono is hilarious.
Yeah, he says, let me try this again. Oh, screw him. He says, I want the Mariner ownership group to buy the Blazers, so we can have some of their success rub off on us. Then we can be the new kings of the NBA. Thank you, Caleb, for, you making fun of I don't even want to say my Seattle Mariners. The Seattle Mariners, which I unfortunately happen to be a fan of. Thank you for making fun of them. They are a travesty to sports. Longest playoff drought in U.S. sports. So shout out to them. Yeah, we don't want to be the Mariners of the NBA. That would be horrible. Shout out to Brian Tadovich, $10 dono. What's up, Brian? He says, can't wait to ball with you guys this summer. I'm guarding Torrey. Won't pull a Pritchard on me for reals. Who's more nice, Mathurin or Daniels? Thanks, guys. Good luck with that, Brian. I wish you the best of luck, man, because you're going to need it. Who's better between Mathurin or Daniels? Right now, I'm taking Daniels.
Conflicting answers here.
What do you mean?
Torrey is 100% on Team Daniels right now. Eric is 100% on Team Mathurin right now. So we're split here on Blazers Uprise.
I like Daniels. I give Daniels the edge because at this point he's a better and more consistent defender, and he's a better ball handler and a better playmaker. That's why I give Daniels the edge. Mathurin is the better shooter. And, definitely the better movement shooter running off screens and whatnot. I just think about what the Blazers need. I wish I could combine both those guys. Because if you could combine both those guys, it'd probably be the number 1 overall pick. But, I mean, I think Daniels will be a solid NBA shooter. What do you disagree with, and why do you have Mathurin above Daniels?
Well, one, free throw percentage indicators lead me to believe Daniels will not be a good shooter.
Why? He shot 74% in the G League.
I think it was 55% or 53% or something like that.
No, not in the
If
not
you combine
in the,
the showcase with the our guy Christian had this the other day. He combined all his stats from different things this year.
I mean, I'm just looking at I'm looking at Tankathon, his stats on Tankathon. I can look up his stats on something else.
Help me out,
But he also
saw that thing from Christian the other day.
Daniels also improved his shooting throughout the year, and was shooting better at the end of the year. I think he finished his G League season. He went 13 for 28 from 3. His last 28 threes, almost 50%. And then he shot really well at the combine. So a guy that improves like that throughout the season, then I think his form is completely fine. That's why I'm not worried about his shot.
Yeah. I just like, I can pretty much bank on Mathurin being a decent enough shooter. I can't necessarily say the same thing with Daniels. I mean, it's just a projection. So yeah, it was combining G League with something else that he did. I forget what it was, but yeah, it was made it a lot worse. But like,
well, how many games did he play? Because
to your point, it was probably earlier in the season.
Yeah,
I think it was the G League showcase or whatever that was, where he played several games in that. But anyways, I'm not sold on Daniels because I don't know. I just feel like he's gonna be more of a really good glue guy role player type, which is fine. It's good. But much to like what you were saying about Keegan Murray this whole time, I feel like we need to swing for someone who's going to be having a potential to be a star player. And I just feel like Mathurin has a much better chance of becoming that than Daniels. I'm not saying that Daniels can't become that. I recognize if he starts shooting threes well and with that playmaking and that defense that he could definitely turn into a star. It's just I just believe in Mathurin a little more, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, where I get hung up on is Mathurin is not a good ball handler yet, and I think if he's able to become a good enough ball handler, I like the way he moves. It's just this ball handling hasn't caught up to him, but like I think he's generally decently quick. Would be a guy that once he can handle the ball better would be a little bit more shifty, have more burst off the dribble, and be able to like break guys down. It's just he's not particularly close there yet. I wouldn't mind Mathurin whatsoever. You know, we're just debating the two of them, and I have Daniels at 5 and Mathurin at 7. I have Shaden Sharp at 6 right now. So I mean, it's not like I'm low on Mathurin at all. Yeah. You know, if all of my top 6 are gone, I want Mathurin at 7. But ball handling wise, he has further to go than a Dyson Daniels. So it's like, are you going to put stock in Dyson Daniels' shooting improvements over last season, where he improved throughout the year and he has decent form? Or are you going to put stock in Mathurin like becoming, you know, that level of ball handler? I think is what the difference is there. Now Mathurin is probably going to be a little better shooting off the dribble, but I think Daniel's a little bit more crafty attacking the rim, and he has a little bit more size.
So it was basically the same sample size. So one of them, it was the G League showcase. I think he shot 38% free throws, and the G League games he shot 70-something%, whatever, 73.5% or whatever it is.
Which one was
that combined to make
first, and which one came second?
I don't know.
Huh. Yeah, that's wild. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with his form. I don't know. And he improved throughout the year. There's certain guys in the past who haven't shot the 3-ball well, but I've thought that their form was completely fine, so I didn't really knock them for it. The most notable guy I think I can remember is Tyrese Maxey. He was a 30% shooter in college, and there were some questions about whether he'd be able to shoot the ball. That's why he fell to the 21st pick to Philadelphia. But form-wise, his form looked completely fine to me. And his rhythm, shooting the ball, like everything looked fine to me, so I wasn't really too worried. He comes in his rookie season, shoots 30% from 3, which he did in college, and then this season, on 4 attempts a game, shoots 42.7% from 3. So, I don't know. When the guy's form is good enough and looks repeatable, and here's the thing, Daniels missed a lot of shots short. He didn't have wild misses for the most part. It was a lot of like barely missing short. I don't have concerns about his shooting. Okay. So that's why I like him. But I mean, shooting numbers aren't pretty. So obviously it's just kind of projecting what you see versus, you know, what the stat says, and there's no right or wrong answer at this point.
Are you taking Daniels over Sharp? If those two are on the board?
Sharp's measurements, yeah. Because I think Sharp has more upside, but I think Sharp at the 3 is he's just more undersized than Daniels is.
Yeah.
If Sharp measured the same as Daniels, I'd take Sharp over Daniels any day of the week.
I was a little disappointed that because there was rumors right before the combine that Daniels is going to measure 6'7" without shoes. Yeah. I was a little disappointed he only measured 6'6".
He measured 6'6". Yeah. Shaden Sharp, he was supposed to be 6'6", and he was 6'4".
Yeah, right.
Without shoes, so I was even more disappointed in that. And that's the thing is, whenever I hear stuff like that, I always knock him down a little bit. So Daniels measured about what I expected. I do have to wonder, and I looked at some previous years' standing reaches, like back, a decade ago. I have to wonder if they're measuring it a little bit differently, because when I look back like 10 years ago, guys with a similar height without shoes and a similar wingspan were measuring lower standing reaches, it seems like. Compared to now, where like you have a Shaden Sharp, he's 6'4" with a 6'11" wingspan, and he has a 8'7.5" standing reach. I don't know. Like if you go and compare this year, Eric, and you go and look at like 2011 or 2012, and you compare guys with similar heights and wingspans, it seems like this year's standing reach numbers might be a little bit inflated.
Well, the flip side of that would be, I think, when players have abnormal standing reaches or wingspans or one or the other, I think they become more of a prospect than they would have in the past. So like it was just like in the past, oh hey, Larry Bird's good at basketball, who cares what his wingspan and standing reach is, right? Yeah. And now it's like, oh, you gotta know, like if it's because there's all these analytics, like if a guy's hand size and wingspan aren't a certain percentage of their body, like they pan out this percentage of time and stuff like that. So they're like actually like looking more closely at those things, where I think like back in the day they just didn't care, and there's like, oh, okay, standing reach, who cares? Like, oh, okay, 8'4", sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, yeah, even if that's the case, it makes me a little bit less excited about, like Mathurin registering an 8'8" standing reach. So that's where I'll look at height a little bit more.
Compared to the people in the draft in the NBA right now, you'd think most of those are pretty close to being accurate.
Yeah. I mean, you've seen Gary Trent Jr.'s height without shoes, wingspan, and then his standing reach.
I mean... Ever since that measurement was taken, we've had questions about the legitimacy of that. I don't think that's a good example, because like we've always questioned whether that was taken wrong or written down wrong or something.
Well, because then he measured like a vertical jump, which I think was way too high. So do they measure standing reach like right before they measure vertical? With that stick thing where the things that you turn, do they measure it with that?
I think they do it separate, but with vertical, you just reach up and touch with it. I don't know. Verticals, I don't know if it's changed at all, but I know back in the day you could have like slouched a little bit when you reached your hand to make your vertical seem higher than it is. I don't know how accurate they can do it. I mean, it's hard to like force someone to fully lift their arm up. So, I don't know how accurate those are, but I don't know. It's hard to know for sure. That's why I like to go for... Because with shoes, too, it can be manipulated. You can have a little bit of padding in your shoe or something when you take the measurements. Or you could be on your tippy toes a little bit inside your shoe or something if they're a little loose. So I don't like to look at without shoe or with shoes, even though everyone will throw the argument at me, well, players play basketball with their shoes on, right? But I think that's a lot harder to determine if it's accurate than... Because you see some players that have like a 2-inch discrepancy between without shoes, and then some are only 1 inch and stuff. So I like to just look at it without shoes and compare them that way.
Yep. Here, I think Dyson Daniels is more of a Chauncey Billups guy than a Mathurin is, to be honest. Dyson Daniels just screams. I mean, Dyson... I'm not saying Mathurin isn't. Dyson Daniels just screams like a Chauncey Billups type guy to me. Like, they liked Winslow there.
Yeah.
They like Justice Winslow there. So I assume they'd love Dyson Daniels then.
Yeah, for sure.
I have no preference between Daniels and Shaden Sharp, and I'm not like, I wouldn't hate if we took Mathurin over Daniels. I mean, there is a chance that Daniels is a guy that just doesn't shoot the three ball well and isn't able to do much off the dribble because of it. But if Daniels is able, I think, and I said this in the draft profile, if Daniels is able to shoot, and then if he's able to master the art of unexplosive finishing around the rim, aka he needs to watch some Luka Doncic film and just try and pick up on everything that Luka Doncic does in terms of attacking the rim and finishing and creating space with his body and that sort of thing, and changing up his pace. Watch some Kyle Anderson too. If he can do that, then I think he could be, a 20 point per game, 5 assists, 5 rebound per game guy. Mm-hmm. And with really good defense, and that's an all-star caliber player. So that's kind of my hope for Dyson Daniels. Mathurin, if he's able to dribble, able to handle the ball better, and able to, he show flashes of playmaking, and he's able to be more of an off-the-dribble creator guy, then obviously he can be an offensive star too. I just, the deal breaker for me is just I trust Dyson Daniels defensively a little bit more, because Mathurin had really good flashes where he looked phenomenal, but he was very inconsistent.
Yeah, but that also goes back to the whole thing we say about Dame, is that when you're the star player and you're carrying the offense, it's tough to, yeah.
And that's the point I made in the Mathurin video. It's just, if defensively, I like Dyson Daniels simply because I've seen more on that end from him. But he didn't have to carry an offense the way Mathurin did. So I give Mathurin a little bit of a, the benefit of the doubt in that regard. It's just... He's not good getting through screens. That's kind of the one thing that worries me with Mathurin.
All right, so you brought up a name, Kyle Anderson, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Dyson Daniels is the next Kyle Anderson.
No, I don't want him to be. I want him to attack and finish.
Okay, but
at his own pace.
It's definitely a possibility, right? And that's what I'm scared about. Is that he's going to be more like him than he is what you're describing.
I think that's his floor.
I mean, I don't see how anyone can know that. I mean, I know it's projection with all these guys, but we haven't really seen him play a lot. So it's tough to just say that that's his floor, a solid NBA player.
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching as much film as I can on him, because that was a guy I was trying to make up my mind on Mathurin versus Dyson Daniels. That's something that I've been thinking about the past couple of days, is who I like more, because I like Mathurin. So it's a hard decision there between those two guys, because it depends on what you like, and it depends on how you project certain traits. And you can project, a bunch of different traits a bunch of different ways. That's why it's an art,
Al Macas isn't Kyle Anderson a free agent? There you go.
I don't want Kyle Anderson on my team.
We can draft Mathurin and then sign Kyle Anderson.
There's just guys in the league that it's Kyle Anderson's able to get to the rim and finish, and he's so freaking slow. And it's just I watched some of his highlights the other day. It's how in the world is he able to beat the best athletes in the world off the dribble with how slow he moves? And that's the thing, is I knocked Luka for being too slow. I was he's not going to be able to create off the dribble. He's not going to be able to get to the rim and finish because he's not going to be able to blow by guys off the dribble. And I knocked Luka Doncic for that. After Luka became what he became.
For that last year.
I knocked Giddey because he couldn't shoot. And I didn't like his defense. So that's the thing. If you're not super athletic and you can't shoot, then that's more of a problem. Where Luka, it wasn't that I didn't think he would be able to shoot. It was just people are just going to pressure him on the perimeter, and he's going to struggle to get by guys, and he's not going to be able to get to the rim and finish. But Luka Doncic, is able to finish better because he slows down at times, because he changes his pace between slow, super slow, medium, and then every now and then he'll throw in some quickness in there. And it's something that you kind of just got to watch to see, but you have guys that are just really good at kind of moving at their own pace and still getting to the rim, still breaking guys down off the dribble. And like Dyson Daniels doesn't have great burst off the dribble, but we've seen guys be successful without that, attacking off the dribble. So that's where I say he needs to watch some Kyle Anderson in that regard, okay? Hopefully he's better at everything else than Kyle Anderson, and hopefully, his jump shot doesn't turn into as ugly as Kyle Anderson's jump shot, because I cringe every time I see that.
Yeah.
So.
I just, as a side note, I wonder if, like, Sharp or Mathurin or insert Keegan Murray, I know not for you, Tori, but just like if one of those guys would have been our first workout and the only big name we've had in so far, if that would have been the guy for him to be like fawning over right now instead.
Over Keegan Murray?
No, over it's like Dyson Daniels. I feel like there weren't many people that were saying pick him at 7 until he was in for a Portland workout, has a really nice interview where he seems very intelligent and well-spoken and stuff like that, and seemed to know exactly how he'd fit in with the Blazers and that kind of stuff. So I think that endeared him to a lot of fans who are now thinking about that.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah. That's possible. I can confidently say that's not me.
No, I know.
But it's definitely I know. That's definitely possible for other people, for sure. For sure. I just want chat to know that's not me. I don't think I've ever had him outside of my top 10 on my big board, and then he measured better than I thought, and I have less concerns now about his shooting. That's why I've bumped him up. Bumped him up to where he's at now. But I think 5 through 8, which 5 through 8 for me is different than 5 through 8 for a lot of people, because instead of Keegan Murray in that range, I have Johnny Davis. I think they're interchangeable. The problem is Johnny Davis is undersized for the 3. If we needed a shooting guard, I would be debating Dyson Daniels versus Johnny Davis right now, and Benedict Mathurin, because I think Johnny Davis defensively is going to be really good, and then off the dribble he has some upside there, and he's strong finishing around the rim, creative finishing around the rim. It's just, can he knock down shots just kind of like the same way as the Dyson Daniels? But I think Johnny Davis has as much star potential as the Dyson Daniels. It's just, Dyson Daniels, I put a little bit more stock in his playmaking, and he has a little bit more size. So that's what gives him the edge, in my opinion. But you're basically nitpicking small differences with certain guys. And then, Mathurin's, I think, a lot different than Johnny Davis or Dyson Daniels, but I mean, he has strengths in his own right that they don't have, and that's the shooting, and that's being able to shoot off the move, which is a great skill to have in a complementary role, and that's his cutting, and that's, that sort of thing. So, I mean, we're just nitpicking differences at this point. I don't think it's clear-cut between anything at that range.
Here's my problem. If Daniels, I mean, obviously, both of us will agree, right, that we're not necessarily thinking of just this season, right? We want the best long-term prospect for the Blazers, right? Whoever turns out to be the best star. I mean, it would help if it's sooner rather than later. But just playing it out in my mind, I can see a scenario where you envision Dyson handling the ball with Ant and Dame running off screens, right? Off ball, finally getting that guy who can set that up, right? But in my mind, worst case scenario, Dyson isn't quick enough or crafty enough to get into the paint, and he's not a good enough shooter to play off ball, so you can't really play him as much with Dame and Ant on the ball. So then,
would that not apply to Draymond Green?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying worst case scenario. I'm not saying this is going to happen or this is what I'm projecting to happen.
No, I know. I just, like, that's the thing is, I think about, in the worst case scenario, and it's still, you look at a Draymond Green who really struggles to shoot the ball and isn't like somebody that's breaking down defenses off the dribble, and he's still a really key part. Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit different this year. I guess they've had success, even though Draymond hasn't shot well, but he did shoot well for in the 73 win season. I believe he shot a respectable 3-point percentage and stuff. So it wasn't like he was completely Evan Turner level, during that entire run. I think he did have a season or two where he shot the ball at least decent enough to where teams had to respect him even the following season where it kind of tailed off. But the problem is, so I could see a scenario then where I don't know how to play with Daniels in the game, whereas I think Mathurin would be fine off the ball, and then you still have Damon Ant on the ball, so do you necessarily need a third ball handler with that group? You also have Nurkic, who you could run some offense to. So I'm just trying to envision a scenario where you get the worst case from both of them, and I still feel like Mathurin's a slightly better fit, whereas best case scenario, you might be right, where if he is able to shoot the three consistently and just become even like a 37-38% three-point shooter where you can play him off ball, that will also allow him to get into the paint easier, to run the ball when he has the ball in the offense and run Damon Ant off screens and stuff. So like best case scenario, it's probably Daniels when you combine everything else, his defense and stuff like that. But I just envision like if those projections for Daniels don't work out, I'd rather have Mathurin.
I think that just, in the end that, the difference between me and you is I'm just a little bit less worried about Daniels' shooting.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably where the difference lies.
I'm a little worried about competition level too. But
I mean, with Dame and Ant being our starting backcourt, I don't know, man. That's nothing I've never really worried about.
Yeah, that's true, but I don't know. Just
because people hated the Dame pick. I remember arguing with people when I was 16 years old, Eric, about we need to draft Damian Lillard. And it's, where did he play? Weaver State.
Yeah.
Oh, he didn't play against anybody. Why would we draft a dude who's not proven against anybody that would play in the NBA? He's played against nobodies, and he's going to come into the NBA and be a good player? Really? Is that what you think? That's what was being talked about. Basically, a decade ago at this point. 2012. That's what the conversation was. I've never really worried about that.
Yeah, and two players who shot very poorly in the NBL were Giddey and LaMelo, and they both have been fine. I guess it's too early to tell necessarily long term, but they've shot much better than they've shown. Mm-hmm. So that would leave credence to your side that maybe it's just it was just a fluky thing, not a huge sample size, all that kind of stuff.
Do you put any stock into how a guy misses? If a guy shoots 26% from three, is it does how he misses matters at all?
Yeah, of course it does. But you could also make the argument if you're missing close a lot that it's mental, which is fixable. But if you don't have, I'll make a joke for chat right now. If you don't have don't have that it factor, the Isaiah Thomas factor, I guess.
Oh, I thought you were gonna go somewhere else.
No,
I don't even know where I thought you were gonna go, but it scared me.
I'm not making a sexual joke, but I'm just playing off the trolling from Aeromancer. Yeah. So, yeah, I feel like I don't know where I was going either, but yeah. Happy belated birthday, by the way.
Thank you. We streamed the night of my birthday, and nobody said anything, which is kind of how I preferred it.
Was that Monday?
Yeah, that was Monday.
Yeah, nice.
Yep. Thank you for the belated birthday. Connor was like, I'm going to go into chat and tell everybody it's your birthday, and then Connor wasn't there at all, man.
Oh, man.
Connor didn't fulfill his duties, but
yeah.
I don't care. I don't need attention for my birthday or anything.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah, so yeah. Connor hasn't been here in a while. We might need a new mod, man.
Jeez, Connor. Man.
There's all the birthday wishes. Thank you, guys. Let me thank a couple more donos. Brian Tadovich, $2 dono. He says #5'9" with a strap. All right, yeah, I'm definitely not gonna have any issues there. Thank you, Brian, for the dodos. And then shout out Josh the Pels fan, $10 dono. He says, why didn't Cronin combine both trades to create a bigger traded player exception? Also, do y'all think the Blazers should trade back in the draft? Great question. I don't know why they didn't combine the trades to create a bigger TPE, because they would have had a $30 million TPE if they just combined the Clippers and the Pelicans trade. Great question, Josh.
Yeah, something we've talked about before, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if he got it from us talking about it, or if he actually thought about it himself, because if he did, then props. And then, should the Blazers trade back in the draft? I wouldn't hate trading back to like 9. Getting 9 and 20 maybe, or 9 and 25 from the Spurs. I wouldn't necessarily hate that, because I think there's a chance that Dyson Daniels or Benedict Mathurin is still on the board at 9. If not, then it becomes a little bit more iffy on who you draft there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough, because if you asked me this question a few weeks ago, I probably would have said trade back before the combine. Now I want one of these guys. I feel like one of them can help us right away, pretty much, and I kind of want that. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, if we didn't have to trade back, I mean, I don't see any way the Spurs are giving up anything to move up 2 spots, but if they did, sure.
I mean, 9 and 25, and then if neither of those guys are there, I would be down to trade down from 9 to 13 in PJ Washington. Because if both those guys aren't there, then Duran's on the board. Mm-hmm. And if Charlotte really wants Duran, then maybe you trade down from 9. Like, I would take 13, 25, and PJ Washington for 7, I think. I don't know. Would you take 13, 25, and PJ Washington for 7?
I mean, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of borderline. If it's 13, 20 in PJ Washington, I'd probably do it.
I'd almost rather just take a chance on the pick at 7 being a star, you know?
Yeah, I just feel like you can... If you're at 13, you can take a chance on a couple of different guys that still have some star upside.
We're probably still trading 25 in the Milwaukee pick then for Grant.
Yeah, you know, and then you get your Jeremy Grant. But... like, at 13, you can take a chance on an Ousmane Dieng. You can... I mean, that would be the guy for me at 13.
Mm-hmm.
Like, clear cut. Like, if you want to take a chance, him. If you want a guy who maybe is a little higher floor, then you got Tari Eason there.
Yeah. Man. There's so many intriguing prospects. Because, like, at 25, you know, then it becomes like Koloko, Leonard Miller, maybe, you know, that kind of thing. Intriguing, but yeah.
I wish I knew what Kamagate's size was, because that's a guy I feel like has some sneaky upside. I just don't know if he has center size. That's a guy that I've started to like. At 25, though, Laravia is like the guy I would want in that range. I like Laravia a lot. But like Jalen Williams might fall to there. You know what I mean? Like, you would have probably somebody at 25 that would be decent. Maybe a Jovic. I mean, Jovic is another one of those high upside guys. If we trade down, that maybe we could take a look at. He's just rough defensively, but he has the size to play the 4. So if he puts on strength, I think he could maybe hang a little bit more guarding 4s. Compared to guarding like 2s and 3s, because I've seen him listed as like a shooting guard, small forward, but he's 6'10" with a 7-foot wingspan, with like a 9-foot standing reach. So,
and someone asked us about trading for Randall, our 7th pick for Randall. No, we don't.
Nope. Time to end the stream.
Yeah.
No Julius Randle. Oh, what's up, Brady? Good to see you in a stream once in a while. He says, mod Brady, in my opinion. He only comes in here to tell me to mod him. Anyway, anything else for this stream, Eric?
No, thanks everyone for watching, and hope everyone has a good day.
Yep, we'll catch you again live on Monday. Once I get my hearing back, I'll probably record a couple videos. I just don't feel like recording right now, because I still can only hear like 40%, 50% on my right ear, and it's weird. If any of you have ever dealt with this, you know it's kind of distracting. So Good to chill with you guys for an hour and a half, talk some hoops, talk some potential Phil Knight buying the Portland Trailblazers discussion and NBA Finals. So we will talk about Game 2 on Monday because Game 2 is Sunday. And we'll see if there's any more developments on this Phil Knight thing. And that's what's on tap. Anything else?
No. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Yep, we will catch you whenever we catch you next. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.